Good afternoon, members and officers and members of the public who may be tuned into our YouTube channel for the Planning Committee meeting today, the 20th of January 2021. I know I've seen some members before at meetings, but can I wish you a belated Happy New Year? And I think all of us hope it gets better for everybody and that you're staying safe and well. Okay, as usual, I'm going to ask if you're here. I can see who's here, obviously, but when I call your name out, if you wouldn't mind saying you're here. I am aware of a couple of apologies, but I will bring their name out at this stage and then come to apologies on the agenda item. Thank you. Councillor Coleman-Cook.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Orban.
Yeah, here, Chair.
Councillor Bayford.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Curry.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Dennis. Councillor Moore, Pat Moore.
Here, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Garner.
I'm here, Chair.
Councillor Hart.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Keane. I know sometimes Heather is a few minutes late, but I'll come back to that. Councillor Paul Moore.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Scott. Councillor Taylor. Councillor Wright. Councillor Wright.
Here, Chair.
Thank you.
Sorry, the mic wasn't working.
No, don't worry. And obviously I'm here. I note that Councillor Keane is trying to join us. But I will carry on. As always, members.
Sorry, Chair, I'm here. Councillor Keane, I'm here.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you very much.
I believe Councillor Patmore's here as well, Chair.
Yes, I think I got that one down. Thank you, James, for that. Thank you. Right. So welcome to the Planning Committee. If you have any technical difficulties during the meeting, then please contact Democratic Services. It's Katie today, whose number is 577046, and her number will appear in your chat box, and if it helps for your convenience. I would ask participants to mute their microphone when you are not speaking. This minimises any background noise and will help everyone to listen to the proceedings. Microphones must only be on if the participant has been granted permission to speak. To gain my permission to speak, please very briefly indicate in the chat box, once again on the right-hand side, and I will, obviously, when I've seen your name come up, I will come to you. But everybody present, please ensure that their mobile phones are turned to silent and that they are not used to make and receive phone calls while the meeting is in progress. Please also refrain from checking emails or conducting other business, and ensure that you are in a quiet room free from distractions for the duration of this meeting. Please note that this meeting, as mentioned, is being live streamed for members and the general public, and following the meeting, the recording will be available on the Council's YouTube channel. Members no members have at the moment and have been asked to speak under procedure 20.1. Has that changed, members? Are there any members online who wish to speak on any item? No. Any members of the committee, which obviously which hasn't come up for councillor speaking? No. Okay, thank you for that.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry to interrupt. I've just put it in the chat box for you. If members choose to debate item 4C, I would like to request to speak under 20.1, please.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. All right. Thank you. Right, moving on. Agenda item 1, apologies from absence. As mentioned earlier, I did have an apology from Councillor Scott. I don't think there are any substitutes for Councillor Scott who have arrived. No. Also, Councillor Taylor and Councillor George Roseski is substituting for Councillor Taylor. Nice to see you again, George.
Thank you, Chair. I'm present.
Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? Thank you. Item 3, approving minutes. Do members agree that the minutes of the Planning Committee meetings held on the 2nd and the 16th of December 2020 be approved? Could I have a proposer, please?
I'll propose that, Chair.
That's Councillor Curry. Seconder, please. Thank you. Do you agree?
Agree.
Thank you. Item 4, once again, members, as you're aware, site visits cannot take place until it is safe to do so. The following applications, if you could make a note, have been reserved for public speaking. That is agenda item 4A, flats 2 and 4 Zion Court, Zion Hill, Ramsgate. Also agenda item 4I, Green Lawns, 16 Soul Street, Broadstairs. So moving on to the first item of the proper planning, it's item 4A, which is flats 2 and 4 Zion Court, 3 to 4 Zion Hill, Ramsgate. I would ask an officer, please, to read out the statement which is supporting this application, and I believe it is Suki.
Yes, Chair. There's in fact 2 statements. There's one in support of the application, and there's another one that appears to be against it.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'll read out the statement against first, and then the statement for second.
Thank you.
Okay. The first statement is from Jean Mancini. You will see there have been many letters from local residents opposing this application, of which I believe I am representing their views. Contrary to the design and access statement, there will be a significant impact of loss of privacy on the properties to the rear of the development, not just in Rose Hill or Zion Passage as stated, but the impact on Adelaide Gardens has not been considered. Loss of sunlight will be very noticeable to all the residents who live at the rear of the property, that is Rose Hill, Zion Passage and Adelaide Gardens, and in particular the balcony of the top floor flat in the adjoining property to Zion Hill. The proposed building will look directly into the gardens of the 2 ground floor flats below, numbers 1 and 3, and also into the gardens of the first few houses in Rose Hill, Zion Passage and Adelaide Gardens, where the proposed door-sized rear windows will have a direct view into the dining room of number 1 Adelaide Gardens. The rear balcony of the adjoining top floor flat in Harbour View, 2 Zion Hill, will completely lose its light and view of the sea on its only outdoor space. The balcony will be very closely overlooked, being directly attached to the proposed top floor. Likewise, the new development will be overlooked by them in their rear bedroom windows. The other major concern is about the foundations of the site. TDC's Planning Department and Building Services Department note that there are no true foundations to this property, which is suspended over rubble. Built just post-war, this property, together with Zion House, next door but one, and the first 3 houses in Adelaide Gardens were built in this way. Zion House was redeveloped circa 2008. The TDC Buildings Inspector insisted adequate foundations had to be built to support the rear extension, together with extra solid foundations to be added to the original front foundations to take the weight of the 4-storey build. All the above-mentioned post-war built properties were designed to be just 2 stories. When a single-storey kitchen extension was built to the side of 1 Adelaide Gardens in 2018, the Buildings Inspector insisted on more solid foundations than the original under the house, even remarking that the extension was now propping up the 2-storied house. Knowing these facts about the foundations, if planning permission is granted and work commenced without a full foundations inspection, who would be responsible for any consequence of damage, collapse of the building? Would it be the TDC Planning Department or the designers stroke builders? Excuse me. This is the next statement, and this is from Ivan Del Renzio, RIBA, and he says, "Dear Sirs, I'm a local architect and my practice has been engaged by the applicant to extend and remodel 2 flats at 2 and 4 Syon Court. The first floor flats are owned by members of the same family who own the flying freehold of flats 2 and 4 and wish to expand their current living space upwards. The building currently consists of 4 flats and was infill bomb damage constructed post-World War II. The terrace used to feature 4-storey townhouses similar in appearance to number 5, left of front elevation. This application seeks to replicate the massing and form of the former terrace. An application has previously been approved to add an additional 2 storeys to the building, that's TH 070208, a joint application with Syon House. Time and care has gone into the design of the proposal, including seeking pre-application advice with the local authority and taking on board comments and amending the design prior to the planning application submission. The scheme is supported by the local authority officers and local conservation advisory group. The planning application is only one part of the process in extending the property upwards. The next steps are a structural engineering exercise and party wall stroke structure notices. These are out of the scope of the planning process as the building is not listed. The current government has implemented sweeping permitted development rights under Class AA permitted development, allowing 2 additional storeys to flats and dwellings. I understand the principal objector is a Member of Parliament. I believe that the application meets the requisite planning policies in that the design improves and enhances the conservation area. It allows expansion of residential accommodation for the families and is sited in a highly sustainable location, and would respectfully ask the committee to approve the application.
Thank you very much, Suki. I'll ask the planning officer now if is it South Ian or Annabelle?
It's actually Emma.
Emma, I beg your pardon, Emma. I've seemed to have missed you out once before. So if Emma could please give us the details of the planning application. Have we lost Emma?
No, sorry, I'm just trying to.
Don't worry.
Sorry. Okay. So, can you see the screen? Okay.
Not yet.
Oh, you can't?
Nope. Hasn't presented. Coming on now, Emma.
See it now?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so the application site is outlined here in red. So it's numbers 3 and 4 Syon Hill. This is the application site in the centre here. So at the moment, it's a 2-storey building. You can see at first floor level, there's an extension projecting to the front. So the proposal is to amend the first floor level and to build 2 floors above this building, the full width of the building. So this is another view of that building. So you can see in these photos the height of the surrounding buildings, which are predominantly 4-storey buildings in this row. So again, this is a further out shot from Syon Hill looking towards the application site. So again, you can see that all surrounding buildings are much taller than the existing building within the site. And then this is the rear of the building. So this is the existing rear elevation, and this is the first floor level of that building. So again, the proposal is to extend up 2 stories above this elevation here. And then this is just showing a view from further out, looking towards the application site. So again, the application site is this area here. So you can see the drop down height of the building. And again, you can see the entire row of buildings, which are all 4-storey. And also neighbouring rows, so to the right and left, you can see that the buildings are all predominantly 4-storey in height in this location. And then another shot showing that street elevation. And then this is taken from behind, so the application site area is here. So this is the existing elevation, as you saw in the photos. So the ground floor isn't being touched through this proposal, so that's remaining as is. But the first floor, the proposal is to remove this first floor element. And so this is the proposal. So you can see the first floor element has gone, and now there's 2 stories built above the building. A balcony has been retained or created at first floor level with a much smaller, shallower balcony at second floor level, and you can see there's no balcony above at the top level. In terms of the windows, the aluminium framed, the similar proportion to the windows on neighbouring properties. They're not sliding sash, they're a more modern design window. So the windows are actually open inwards. So it's a full glazed unit without any glazing bars within it. And then these central openings are doors onto the balcony area, so a single door. So the proposal is to use brick to build both of these elements. So the brick to be used on both of the buildings would be slightly different. The both would be red brick, but it'd be slightly different colour, just to give the sense of the vertical emphasis of the buildings within this elevation. So to give the impression of 2 separate buildings rather than a wide building. At roof level, there would be a roof terrace area, which would serve the units. The proposal is not to increase the number of units, to actually enlarge the existing number of units. So at the moment, there's 2 2-bed flats within the building. The proposal is for 2 6-bed masonettes. So all this is doing is creating 2 much larger units. So there's no increase in number. So this is the rear elevation at the moment. So at the moment, there's already a first floor balcony to the rear. And this is the proposal. So the first floor stays the same. It's showing a new external staircase into the garden, although it seems to be a bit debatable as to whether that staircase actually is present at the moment. Some photos have been submitted to suggest that there could be that staircase existing, but it's not quite clear. The proposal, therefore, is these additional 2 floors above. So again, you can see similar openings to the front elevation with some doors and balconettes on the rear. And at top level, you can see the roof terrace with some balustrading. This is just showing the ground floor. So as I said, the ground floor isn't actually being changed. So this is the existing first floor, showing the current 2-bedroom layout of each of the units. This is now the proposed first floor. So there will still be 2 bedrooms within that level, and the kitchen and dining area. This is now the proposed second floor level, which shows an additional 3 bedrooms in each of the units. And then the third floor, which shows the 6th bedroom and a further lounge diner area. This is the existing roof plan. And then this is the proposed roof plan on the top of the 4th floor. So this is the roof terrace area. So this is the top of the plan is the rear. So it shows that the balustrading will be set back 2 metres from the rear elevation. So in order to avoid overlooking down into the garden area, that setback of the balustrading will mean that views would be out rather than down. And then again to the front, which is at the bottom of this plan, the balustrading is set back at least 1 metre from the front elevation. And these areas here is just the staircase that goes up to the roof level, which will be sort of centrally located within the building and therefore won't be particularly visible from street level. This is the existing section of the buildings at the moment. So again, you can see the 2-storey of the buildings, and there's another structure above it which would be demolished. And this is now the proposal. So the 2 floors just follow the existing front and rear building lines, excluding that front projection. You can see the depth of the first floor balcony, and then the second floor balcony, which is just that railing area there. I believe these windows here, I think that's actually the building behind it, because this isn't actually part of this proposal. So it's just the railing areas there. And then the perspective view, just showing the existing building as it is, and then the proposal. So the site's located within the conservation area, but it would appear historically there would have been buildings of this height in this street scene, because as you can see, all surrounding buildings are of this height, and the buildings that are there look like they've been adapted in the past. So it looks like potentially these buildings may have been damaged during the war, and that's why they're at a lower height. So to actually reinstate them back up to the 4 stories in height is actually considered to be beneficial to the conservation area. So in terms of the design, you can see that it follows the pattern of the front elevations. You can see along that elevation, it's quite traditional to have windows of this size and in this this format to the front elevation, and the balconies as well are characteristic of historic buildings of this age. So the design is considered to be in character with the conservation area. In terms of the impact to neighbours that was mentioned, so as you can see in terms of actually I'll go back to the photos just to show you. So going back to the rear elevation, the elevation follows straight up here. This follows on from this elevation, so there will be a slight projection beyond this rear elevation of the neighbours, but it would only be a matter of a metre and therefore wouldn't impact on light or outlook significantly to that property. And again, the projection on this side is similar. It's not going to have a real significant impact on light or outlook to this property on the right hand side here. In terms of overlooking, there's already first floor windows that look into this rear garden area and towards the properties at the rear. And as mentioned, these are going to be, there's no additional units being provided. So it would be the occupants of one of each of the units looking out to the back. So it's not considered that there will be a real increase in overlooking, especially given the fact that all neighbouring properties are 4 stories with windows looking towards the rear. So there is already loss of privacy to properties at the rear, and it's not considered that this increase would significantly increase that impact. So the impact on neighbours is considered to be acceptable. For the living conditions of the future occupiers, as you can see, they're very large units, so there's no concern there. And the proposal is to provide a cycle and refuse storage unit on this balcony at the rear for the occupiers to use. Whilst there's no doorstep play space associated directly with these units, because the rear garden area is linked to the ground floor unit, the roof terrace is provided, and the site is in close proximity of the seafront, where there's public amenity space that could be used, and the site's located within the edge of the town centre. So it's usually the case that in town centre locations it's very difficult to achieve doorstep play space for units given the constrained size of the sites. In terms of highways, as you can see, there's not really any space for any off-street parking, but the site is sustainably located within walking distance of the town centre and bus stops and railway station. And again, there's no actual increase in unit numbers, so the impact is not considered to be unacceptable. So overall, the design and impact on neighbours is considered acceptable, along with impact on highways, and therefore it's recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma. I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Could the Vice Chair please second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman Cook. Councillor Orban.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I called this application in because I was concerned about the impact of the large increase in height on adjacent residential properties. Having now been able to fully take in the whole development, there was obviously, in principle, a previous application to increase the height. The actual design of the building, in my humble opinion, enhances the conservation area. I think most of the overlooking issues have been dealt with as laid out by Ms. Fibbins, and on the whole, Chair, I am more than happy to support this application. Thank you.
Or who that is? It's gone. I think Councillor Bayford was muted there for a moment. Thank you, Councillor Orban. Councillor Keane.
Yeah, just a question.
To members, I do apologise. This does happen sometimes, and members of the public, if you're listening.
Yeah, my question was, I believe you said, Emma, that the windows were going to be aluminium. Is that the same as the windows of the neighbouring buildings? Oh.
Can you answer that, Emma?
I don't know if I do know the answer to that, actually. I'm just looking at the photos. It does look, looking at the photo, that do you want just to share the photo again? Looking at the buildings to the left, it looks like there's a mixture. It does look like there's potentially some aluminium on a building to the left. It's difficult to tell from this far away, but there's a building 2 buildings away which has dark framed windows, which I would assume may well be aluminium. It looks like there's also some UPVC on some of the windows as well in that area. And possibly the one to the left, upper level, maybe timber. So it does look like there's a mix of material around there. Obviously, being a conservation area, we would always immediately usually, suggest that it should be timber in the first instance. But aluminium is also considered to be an appropriate material for windows because of the fact you can get quite slimline frames, and therefore it's more appropriate than a UPVC window that's usually quite thick and therefore more inappropriate and not seen to be sort of as historic in its design. So yeah, I think because whilst they are trying to be in keeping with the size and proportions of the windows when looking at the historic buildings next door, they are trying to have a bit of a modern twist on it by using aluminium and by not having the central glazing bar and going for a full glazed window. So it will look slightly modern, but be in keeping with historic design of buildings in that elevation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Councillor Keane. Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about whatever happened there. Terrible noises. Sorry. Yes, I see that, the objections seem to focus on the proposed development being out of keeping with the historic architectural design. I have to say, I think it looks more in keeping than what's there at present. So I'm very happy to support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. I don't see any other speakers. Yes, I do. Councillor Rozeski.
Thank you, Chair. No, looking at that, the design does seem to be in keeping with the area. I'm happy to support also.
Thank you. And Councillor Hart. David, are you?
Yeah, as you know, I'm not the quickest on this technology thing. Just a quick question. There's 6-bedroom apartments, I think Emma said. Does that mean they're going to try and turn it into an Airbnb? And would that come under the planning, or is that something different? Or is it actually just going to be a 6-bedroom house? Thank you.
All they've proposed is 2 6-bed masonettes, so there's no other suggestion of anything other than that. For an Airbnb, it wouldn't actually require consent because it's basically just renting out a flat as if you were renting out, a flat normally. So it doesn't actually change the use class. If it was anything other than that, like a HMO or anything like that, then that would need consent. So we'd have to see another application. But at the moment, all the information we have is that it would be 2 6-bed masonette units.
Okay, thank you, Emma. Okay, members, I'm going to put this to you for the vote. Once again, I will call your names out. If you're for, against, or you're abstaining, please let me know. I will start with Councillor Coleman-Cook.
For.
Councillor Orban.
For.
Councillor Bayford.
For.
Councillor Curry.
For.
Councillor Patmore.
For.
Councillor Garner.
For.
Councillor Hart.
For.
Councillor Keane.
For.
Councillor Paulmore.
For.
Councillor Rozeski.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
And myself, I'm for as well. I think that is unanimous. So the motion has been passed, approved. Thank you, James. Okay, members, moving on to agenda item 4I, which is the Green Lawns 16 Soul Street in Broadstairs. I'm going to ask Suki, our officer, once again to read out a statement of objection of this application. Thank you, Suki.
Chair, I don't have. Yes, okay. Sorry, I thought it was a different application, but I'm sorry, Chair, I'll read it up. Thank you, Chair and members of the Planning Committee. I'm the tree warden for Broadstairs and St Peters Town Council, and in that capacity, I review and make recommendations to the Broadstairs Council Planning Committee wherever work to TPO trees is applied for, and when applications are submitted that include work to trees. It is notable that the initial application for green lawns was made without any reference whatsoever to the standard mature TPO trees on the perimeter of the property and sought to remove them all. They are a mixed stand of ash, horse chestnut and predominantly sycamore. The latter has received an unjustifiably bad press over the years. The latest science, in fact, shows it is likely to be Celtic maple, not a recent introduction, and it is one of the best trees for pollution removal and carbon sequestration. A visit from the TDC tree officer at my request has resulted in a design that incorporates these important trees, and I welcome this. But I have 4 points that still concern me in the design as follows. Firstly, the application makes no mention of adherence to BS 5837/2012, trees in relation to design and construction, in the amended application, which recommends that there should be a soil assessment to establish likelihood of shrinkage that might affect building work. There is no mention of this, and it has been a problem in other sites in Thanet. So the paved and built areas may need to be constructed further to the east to take account of this. There is room on the site for this. Secondly, BS 5837/2012 also recommends that root protection areas are observed. Document 02-proposed block site plan shows that the paved area of Unit 1, because it is offset in relation to other units and mirrors the offset to the north, appears to encroach on the RPA of the southern group of trees. If the unit were moved further northwards, there would be no encroachment onto the RPA of these trees. Thirdly, I also note that 03-proposed landscaping plan has not been updated to incorporate the retained trees. This is an important omission and should be rectified prior to your granting permission. And fourth and finally, there is also no mention of how the trees will be protected during construction, nor how they will be managed ongoing and who will be responsible. The arborist had already recommended ivy removal, for example. These trees form an important visual amenity for the area and also contribute to the carbon sequestration, carbon capture and clean air of Thanet. Please request that the design is further amended, therefore, to correctly protect the RPAs of the trees to the south and west of the property in accordance with BS 5837/2012, that a landscape plan and schedule of work is produced that takes account of these trees during construction and into their future. The design is almost there, but not quite right. Please do not grant permission until these plans are updated correctly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Suki. I'll ask the Planning Officer now to read the report, which is...
It's me, Chair.
Thank you, Ian.
I will just share my screen. Okay. So the site in question is outlined in red. The application is for the erection of 4 detached 2-storey dwellings with parking, looking to utilise the existing access into the site. So you can see that the site has a sort of double frontage with Soul Street on the western side of the site where the main access is, and Crawford Road at the rear. So this is an aerial image showing the site again outlined in red. So this site is garden land to number 16 Soul Street, also known as Green Lawns, which is the area in blue. So just to show some 3D aerial images just to give you an idea of the relationship between the landscaping and also the dwellings around there. So the site is in the center of the image. You can see that the character of the area is one predominantly of detached dwellings, but with some semi-detached dwellings, either bungalows such as the ones in Crawford Road, or predominantly two-story properties in the vicinity of the site. You can see trees at the front of the site here. So the application site is covered by a tree preservation order, which is a tree preservation order from 1974, which covers those trees that were present on site in 1974. And we'll discuss the trees in a little bit, but it's useful to see in the next couple of images the extent to which those trees cover the site. So just giving a view from the other angle. So Seoul Street is along here and Crawford Road at the back is here. You have a primary school here, which fronts St. Peter's Park Road. And the existing property number 16 here in the image. You can see two structures which have subsequently been removed since this photo was taken in the middle of the site. But you can see there's one tree that's next to the neighbour at number 4 here, but the trees are at the front of the site. So this is a view. So this is a slightly elevated view taken from Google to give a wider view of the existing site access. And you can see the trees in summertime here. Again, those two garages that I mentioned from the aerial images that were present on the site are here. And you can see in the background here, the dwellings on Crawford Road. This is the existing boundary wall, which is proposed to be retained as part of the development. And this is the vehicular access that will be utilised as part of the scheme. So you can see actually within the site, you can see there's areas of hard surfacing here already. I'll just then show the view looking down Seoul Street. So you can see at the moment, you've got very much a tree-lined section of Seoul Street here. And then looking at the other end of the site, so turning to the left from the image that we're looking at, this is number 16 or Green Lawns, which you can see is right up against the road and faces into the application site, which effectively was its rear or side and rear garden. So just a few images inside the site. So looking towards the front of the site where the trees are from within the site. So you can see here the extent and the height of the trees, but also the extent of land within the site that is currently open. Turning to the right, this is turning again, seeing the extent of the trees at the moment. So this area here on the right-hand side of the image is another hard surfaced area, which is serving the vehicular access here, which is an additional one which serves number 16, which is here. As you can see, it faces onto part of the site. That vehicular access is being retained for use by number 16, and we'll see on the site plan the delineation between the two plots. And then turning around, this is just looking towards Crawford Road, which is at the rear of the site. And you can see that there is an existing quite high 3 meters boundary treatment at the rear, which is the relationship with the school site behind. So that is a number of photos in the site. If we just look at some photos from Crawford Road, so these photos are taken from this area here. So to the right hand side here is the primary school. You can see here images taken recently, so in winter, showing the trees in the background. You have this tree here, which is an ash tree, which has been incorporated into part of the proposal, which I'll touch on in a minute. Then looking at the relationship with the neighbouring dwelling number 4, Crawford Road. This is number 4 Crawford Road, so we've just moved around the corner slightly so you can see the extent of open space on the site where the dwellings will be constructed. You can see again the bank of trees at the front of the site. And then just taking a step back again, just to see the extent of the site and the relationship. So you can see there's a change in land level here, with the bungalow being slightly set down from the road level. And we'll see a site section in a little bit to show the relationship with the new dwellings. So previous history of this site. So in 2017, an application was approved for 3 dwellings on the site. That permission was due to expire last year, but was automatically extended by the central government extension to applications that were due to expire. So it's currently an extant planning permission that doesn't expire until the 1st of May. What that proposed was 3 dwellings, including a dwelling adjacent to number 4, which included the removal of the tree that I just pointed out that was next to number 4, but with the retention of the trees at the front of the site, again utilising the existing vehicular access. So the proposal is for 4 detached dwellings on the site. So looking at this in a bit more detail, as mentioned, they'll be utilising the existing vehicular access. The dwellings themselves are spaced apart. In relation to the surrounding area, they're considered to be of a similar scale and type to those dwellings in the vicinity. There's no concerns with regards to the site appearing cramped or overdeveloped from officers' point of view, given the spacing on the site and the pattern of development in the area. You've got a 20-metre distance to the road from the front of these dwellings, so they are set quite considerably to the back of the site from Sol Street, with number 16 at the top here, if you recall, being set right against the road. One of the main concerns that came up during the application was the impact on the trees. So following discussions and negotiation with the applicant, all the trees currently on the site are proposed to be retained through this proposal. And there are 2 particular conditions that I'd like to draw members' attention to. One is condition 6 that's proposed on the would be proposed on the application, which is for prior to the commencement of development, the submission of an arboricultural method statement. And this is specifically to include tree protection measures ongoing with regards to the site, so covering both construction, and mention has been made of the British Standard Guidance for Protection of Trees during Construction. You'll note in the wording of that condition 6 that requirement is present on the development, as well as further details of how the root protection areas of the trees are to be protected are required to be submitted to the local authority prior to commencement of development, and the applicant has agreed to that condition. With regards to condition 7, which is a landscaping condition, one of the issues that came up was the parking areas that were proposed within the site, which need to be provided to ensure there is adequate off-street parking. However, the proposal did include hard surfacing for that, for those materials, which, as you can see, would be within the root protection areas of some of these trees. Now, you will note from the images that we saw that these trees predominantly are very tall, but do not have a wide crown spread. But to ensure that the RPAs are looked into when designing the hard or soft landscaping, there is a landscape condition, which is 7, to require details of the materials and also taking account of the impact on the trees. So looking at the issues to do with potential compacting and those issues of the soil and the root protection areas have got to be submitted again to the local authority, prior to the development coming forward. The other issue that came up during the application related to ecology. There wasn't any preliminary information submitted at the start of the application. That has now been submitted and has been looked at by KCC's biodiversity officer. That has recommended that there's native species planted as part of the landscaping proposal, and there will be some potential landscaping on the boundary here at the rear, which obviously doesn't exist entirely at the moment, as well as the requirement for nesting boxes for birds and bats. Just one additional point with regards to trees. We have received a comment after the publication of the agenda, which has raised concerns about the retention of the tree adjacent to number 4. So it's unclear whether or not the tree adjacent to number 4 is covered by the 1974 TPO or not. It would appear that it's unlikely to be covered by that TPO by virtue of its age. As part of, after the event of looking into the details via the submission of conditions, there will need to be an assessment once the development is built of whether or not there are trees on site not covered by the existing TPOs that are sufficient in terms of amenity value to actually protect going forward. And therefore there will need to be an assessment of whether or not additional trees will need to be TPO'd when these properties are, if approved, when these properties are owner occupied. So looking at the elevations of the proposal, so the design has been proposed to be quite traditional with brick predominantly and roof tiles to match the area. So going through the designs, they are 4-bedroom properties that are proposed. I'm just going to look through. There are 2 designs of which 2 of the dwellings are handed. So this one is tile hung, which covers the units at the end and one in the middle, and then this is the design of the other property, which is just a handed version of the first design. So it is considered that this matches the character of the area and is a good quality design to resemble and fit in keeping with the existing built environment. So this is a section through the site. This is effectively the street scene of the development. I think one thing that I would like to point out to members, which is very important, is the fact that the unit on the left-hand side here, which is number 16, if you will recall, that is right on the street, whereas these dwellings are 20 metres back from the road. So whilst it looks like these dwellings would be notably higher than the existing property, they will not be seen in quite the same context, and it is considered that the height of the dwellings would not dominate that building because of that setback that's provided. What you can see though from this image is the distance from the neighbouring property at number 4, Crawford Road, in terms of that spacing that's important in terms of looking at the impact on living conditions of number 4. And just to look at this image again, which is the block plan, there is a distance of 5 metres, or it's over 5 metres between the dwellings here, as well as retaining the tree between the units. There is a condition that proposes to obscure glaze and ensure that any first floor windows in unit 1 and also unit 4, so that is to protect the amenities of number 4 Crawford Road, but also the rear garden of number 16 Soul Street. And those windows would also be non-opening below 1.7 metres above the finished floor level of those first floor rooms. So the application proposes off-street parking of 2 spaces per unit. It has a turning head within the site, as well as visitor parking, and there is no concern with regards to the impact on either the highway capacity in the area or indeed any safety concerns that have been raised by KCC Highways. There is a requirement, as this is new residential development, for a unilateral undertaking to secure financial contributions towards the strategic access management and monitoring mitigation on the designated sites. We have received a unilateral undertaking, but it has not been confirmed to be sufficient yet. So the recommendation before members is to defer and delegate for approval, subject to the receipt of an acceptable unilateral undertaking securing the mitigation for the SAMS project. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ian. I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Could the Vice Chair please second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman Cook. I have some members wish to speak. Councillor Garner.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ian, for the presentation. I have to say I called this application in myself about a year ago. When it was initially raised, I think as has been alluded to, it was actually quite a disturbing application because it saw all of the trees being taken out. And I have to say I'm pleased that there have been these changes to the application to recognise that actually their trees are covered by a TPO. So I'm glad that that has happened. There were a number of concerns that raised by Karen McKenzie, that was mentioned earlier, that I would like to see considered as when it's deferred after it's been approved, if it's approved. I believe that Ian has said that condition 6 does cover all of those. And if he can just confirm that it does cover all of those, then that will allay a lot of my fears. One other point that hasn't been mentioned, that road, South Street, I'm very familiar with the area as it's just around the corner from me. And I often walk down there. That road is quite a rat run in the mornings. Well, when we're not in a pandemic, it certainly is anyway. There have been quite a few near misses, and I'm concerned that hasn't been considered with the excess traffic that's going to be on that road. I've seen a couple of near misses myself when I've been down there. Had some heated words with one or two drivers. So I think that needs considering. But on the whole, I'm glad over the course of this application being considered, it has improved a great deal. So I'll be interested to see what others have got to say. But for now, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. Councillor Paulmore.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ian, for your presentation. Basically, Ian's been as professional as ever and has answered most of the questions that I was going to raise. And Councillor Mike Garner has also stolen my thunder regarding the site. I was concerned about the tree by number 4, Crawford Road, that it might not be retained. It does look rather a nice tree, and we are very conscious of trying to keep our Greenswood area. So if we could retain that, or if we could look at the TPOs before they strike ground and not after, when they're occupied, that would make sense, because then the developer's got to put measures in place to make sure they are retained. I don't know if we can make that as a condition, part of condition 6, or a further condition, but I'm concerned that, trees do get damaged by accident, and that tree could potentially be damaged. And so I'd like to try and see if we could do something before, as it's been deferred. Councillor Mike Garner was also quite right that Soul Street is a rat run. I used to live in Soul Street many, many years ago as a young lad. And before the housing development was built on the opposite side that has alleyways leading to Soul Street, those alleyways are rat runs for young children going to school. And if we're going to have potentially more cars pulling out and causing problems, we might need to redress that, or get highways to look at that with regarding a crossing point there for safety, or illumination to highlight those, or signage even, just to show where those alleyways come out, because that's just literally opposite that gated area going in. And that would be not my other concern. But other than that, I'm for the development, and I just think those points need to be rectified. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Did you want to come back on that, Ian, at all?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I will come back on a few of those points if that's okay. So just on taking the tree issue, first of all, in terms of the tree adjacent to number 4, it wouldn't be possible to add a condition which would require a tree preservation order, because the tree preservation order would have a separate a separate process which involves public consultation. And it may be a case that once if it may not be confirmed because of whatever reason, they would need to obviously be looking at whether or not there is any damage from that particular tree to, say, the property at number 4. But we are very conscious of the amenity value of that tree, particularly to Crawford Road. And that's why obviously it's being retained. It's been identified for retention, which has formed part of then the condition which requires the method statement to come in, which will not only retain it but protect it during construction. But indeed, with other sites, the Orb last year, we, after approval, we have actually then TPO'd the trees at the Orb that were potentially threatened by construction, and we would be looking to do a similar sort of thing, but it would need a sort of further assessment by the council about whether or not we would do that. But for the sake of this development, those trees are protected by virtue of that condition. To come back on the highways point, so it's what's known as a non-protocol application, which means highways don't automatically comment on it, the application. In terms of safety concerns, I share the concerns that have been raised in terms of Soul Street, knowing Soul Street myself, about the narrowness there. I think it is important to know that obviously it's an existing access, which then needs to be taken into account. Obviously, that does serve that area, which obviously had a garage in, so movements will increase. But it's really important as well that it's worth mentioning there is an extant approval for 3 dwellings using this access. So the issue is then not the increase from how it looks currently on site, but is there an increase that's harmful above there being 3 dwellings served by this access? And I think the point that Councillor Moore you've made about actually if there is an issue that manifests itself from the dwellings being constructed, there are other avenues in terms of safety issues that come up that can be looked at with KCC highways, I think. And I think that will rely on if there are issues that ward councillors have, for example, if they are raised with us, obviously we can look to facilitate that discussion separate from the planning approval with KCC highways. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Hart.
Yeah, hello. I think most of mine have been answered. I've got a couple of queries, though. The trees look quite close to Soul Street, and I do know the area as well. I used to use it, as they say, as a rat run. But I would assume most of the water those trees are gaining are from the grounds of that property of number 16. So the concern is now, obviously, that the water's going into the ground. The basis for which the hard standing should be permeable. But is there a way of making sure oils and other detritus don't go into the ground? And secondly, I have a concern with the ash tree. I don't think it will probably fall, by looking at that picture, that it will fall under the 74 TPO. It doesn't look big enough for the amount of time. So my concern is not that it's being cut down, it's the fact that might be one of those anomalies that is retardant to ash dieback. So if that's one of those special species that actually is or cannot catch ash dieback, which is a major issue and is coming to our way quite a way, then it should be retained. And I think that needs to be looked at before the thing's cut down.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Ian, do you wish to comment?
Yeah, just to say, in terms of the sort of, I say, hard surfacing for things like the parking areas, which within that, I think it's important to note that we've removed the landscaping plan from the approval list of plans because we have not agreed the landscaping yet. And I think that's an important point, because what we do want to ensure is that whatever is put down for the parking area, which doesn't necessarily need to be automatically hard landscaping. Members will recall the application at St. Peter's Presbytery, where obviously we came back with a solution which looked to actually put something above ground level, which was a geofix, which was a sort of almost like a crisscross that stones went into. So we are looking at that sort of solution, which will try and avoid either soil compaction or indeed the issues to do with moisture that Councillor Hart's talked about. So that is part of that condition 6. And with regards to the ash tree, Yes, the species will play an important role in whether or not we TPO it. And indeed, if the condition of that tree puts forward a case that actually it is more important because of the fact that it's resistant to ash dieback, then obviously that again adds further weight to looking to TPO that tree separately to the 74 TPO that covers the others. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also very happy to see the changes to this application. It's so many issues have been addressed with regards to the trees, biodiversity, and I think that Ian has explained very well all the other issues relating to the application. So looking at the approval alone, I'm very happy to support it subject to condition 6. I think that covers all the issues that we can, just looking at the application. So I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. I can't see any other speakers. So members, I'm going to put this to yourselves once again. I think you should know how it works. If you're for, against or abstain, will you tell me, please? I'll call out your names. Councillor Keith Common Cook. For. Councillor Alban.
For.
Councillor Bayford.
For.
Councillor Curry. For. Councillor Patmore.
For.
Councillor Garner.
For.
Councillor Hart.
For.
Councillor Keane.
For.
Councillor Paulmore.
For.
Councillor Rozeski.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
And myself, I'm for as well. Once again, members, I believe that is carried. And that is to be deferred, and officer's recommendation. Thank you, members. This concludes public speaking for this meeting. I will call upon the clerk to read out the remaining plan and applications. If a member wishes to reserve an application, will they please call out as he or she, I think it's James, reads it out, please. James.
Thank you, Chairman. So the remaining items are 4B, which is land.
That's R, isn't it?
That's right, indeed. Would you like to reserve that one?
I think we ought to chat about that one. Thank you.
Okay, we'll just make a little note of that. Okay, and then the next item is 4C, Foy House, which is...
Yes, I think we should talk about that one too.
Okay, in that case, make a note of that too. Thank you, Councillor Bayford. And obviously in that case then, Councillor Whitehead will speak under 20.1 for that item. Okay, next item 4D, which is 53 to 57 High Street in Margate. 4E, which is 3 Upton Grange Broadstairs. 4F, which is St Peter's Church, Hopeville Avenue.
Please, I'd like to reserve that one.
Okay, make a note of that. Yeah, okay, thanks, Councillor Garner. Okay, then next we got is 4G, which is land adjacent to 2 Wilborough Road, Birchington. And the final one is 4H, which is 3 Upton Grange Broadstairs. Okay, that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Can I have a proposer to move that the applications that have not been reserved be determined in accordance with the officer's recommendations? Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
There's a few there. Take your pick, James or Katie. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. And members agree?
Agreed.
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 Thank you. Right, moving on to item 4B. I'll hand over to the officer who...
Yes, Chair. It's not actually me that's going to be presenting the main item. It's going to be Annabelle, but I did just need to come in on this particular item because as it's been reserved for public speaking, just to update members on one particular issue, if that's okay.
Certainly.
Thank you. So as this item's been reserved for speaking, if I need to outline something that's come up today that members were going to be sent an email about, but it is quite an important point which affects this application, and it doesn't affect the others on the agenda, but it could affect this depending on if it doesn't necessarily go with recommendations. So it's just an important point to consider. So we received the formal result today of the housing delivery test. So this is one of the measures that central government look at, how much housing has been approved or developed in the area, and that is used by central government to assess our planning policies effectively. So what that means in this instance is that we have not achieved in 2020 the housing requirement for the year under the local plan. Now, what it particularly means with regards to the determination of planning applications is that we now move back to the presumption in favour of sustainable development. So you'll recall before the adoption of the local plan in 2020, every application that was outside the then defined urban confines, we had to consider on their own merits. So we couldn't just refuse those applications because they were outside the urban confines if they were housing, because obviously at that point in time, we couldn't demonstrate a 5-year supply of housing land. Following the news today that's come that we haven't hit that target in terms of the housing delivery test, we then move back into presumption in favour of sustainable development again. And what that specifically means is that for any planning policies that relate to the supply of housing or the constraining of where that housing should go need to be considered against that presumption. And so to remind members what that presumption means, it's that effectively it goes back to that test of whether or not there are adverse effects that would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of providing the development, in this instance, the housing development. And so it's a particularly relevant point with regards to this application that's before you this evening, because there is an appeal decision that you will see which looks at these issues about the benefits of the development as housing development. And also the fact of the spatial strategy of the district is to put housing in the urban area. So Annabelle will talk about the detail of the application now, but I just wanted to put that forward as an important consideration when looking at this particular one, because it's development for residential outside the village confines. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Ian. Annabelle.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just share the screen. Hopefully members can now see my screen.
We can.
Thank you, Chair, for confirming. Yes, as has been mentioned, there is an appeal decision for this site, and it relates to the application before us now is for the permanent retention of 2 mobile homes within the application site outlined in red on the slide. So the appeal decision related to a 2015 application that was refused in 2016 for the temporary siting of the 2 mobile homes for a period of 3 years. The appeal was allowed in 2018, and this application, as I said, is for the permanent siting of the 2 mobile homes for permanent residential occupation. So as can be seen, the application site is in red here, Canterbury Road to the west here, and we have Ramsgate Road at the bottom of the slide. The 2 caravans are shown here and here, and there is an access and parking area which we'll look at as we go through coming off Canterbury Road. So this is an aerial view of the site. As you can see, Canterbury Road running down here, Ramsgate Road running along the bottom. This is the application site, the parking area, and we have the listed Saar windmill over here. Another view of the site. This time Ramsgate Road is to the west, Canterbury Road running along here, the application site here, Saar windmill is over here, and you can see from these views that the site, the caravan site, is actually surrounded along the roadside here with Canterbury Road by vegetation, and there is a lot of vegetation in the surrounding area. And the caravans themselves, as we'll see, are normal mobile homes of a single-storey nature. And again, another view of the site, again highlighting the vegetation, the application site here, the listed windmill here, and the access from Canterbury Road and the car parking area, which you will see as we look at some photos. It serves also a number of an access to additional units as well as the application site. And yes, again, we have another view again that puts it in context. We can see the vegetation, the application site here, the listed windmill, the car parking area, and Ramsgate Road, which is also, you'll note, along where you'd get views of the application site is quite vegetated, and there would be limited views of the site from that road. So this is actually a photograph taken from Canterbury Road. You can see the windmill to the extreme left of the slide, and you can actually see a glimpse through, and bear in mind this photograph was actually taken very recently, so in the winter months, a side view, a glimpse of the caravan, just as you go on the right-hand side of the slide. This is a view of the access from Canterbury Road. You can see on the left-hand side of the slide the vegetation, and you can see as you come in the parking area. This is taking us through the entrance. The parking area is on the right, and as mentioned earlier, this area also provides access to a number of other dwellings, including Bramble Cottage. So we've gone into the sort of parking area, and we're looking at Bramble Cottage on the right-hand side. And this is one of the mobile homes that we are considering today for the permanent retention of. This is now into the site, and we're looking at the same caravan we were just looking at the end of. As you described, they are single story in nature. They have some outdoor space. They do, and that's the second caravan that we've seen in the aerial photographs, and we'll look at that one in more detail in a moment. It is clear that being mobile homes, they do not meet the QDO4 national technical standards, which we would expect for other developments, residential developments, to meet, but they are adequate in terms of providing a good standard of accommodation for the residents that exist, that currently occupy them, and future occupants. And they do have amenity space and obviously adequate parking on site. So as we said, we've now gone through the entrance, looked at the parking area and this mobile home. We're going to have a quick look at this mobile home over here. So this is the second mobile home. Again, as you can see, it is a traditional mobile home. It has an amenity space. This is again the end of the second caravan. You can see the listed Saar windmill, but this picture is slightly deceiving because unless you're within this site, you would never see the windmill in that relationship or see the two together in the same context. But it does also show other buildings that also are in close proximity to the windmill. And then this is another view of that same caravan, and you're looking back now towards the first caravan we looked at. So essentially, as have been mentioned, we're looking at the permanent retention of two mobile homes that are already in situ and have been allowed on appeal for a period of 3 years, but now for their permanent retention for permanent mobile occupation, they are low-lying, single-storey structures, and there is a condition that any other structures on the site will be single-storey. They are served by an on-site parking area which is located here, and again, there's a condition for that to be retained. It is noted that there is the listed windmill is in fairly close proximity, but given the relationship between the two properties, the amount of landscaping surrounding the site and intervening buildings surrounding the site, it is not considered that there will be an adverse impact on the listed windmill or indeed to the conservation area of SAR in itself. There is a requirement, as they are going to be permanent residential dwellings, residential units, that for the SAM contribution to be paid. We have received an undertaking to that effect, and that is acceptable. So the recommendation is before members is for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Annabelle. I move the officer's recommendation is adopted. Could the Vice Chair please second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman-Cook. I have some members to speak. Councillor Paulmore.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Annabelle mentioned the Greenswood area off Ramsgate Road. That area has just been cleared for development. How's that going to impact on it? Because I think there's houses going in there. Can you confirm that, please?
Can you do that, Annabelle? Can you?
To mute, sorry. I am not aware of the particular application, unfortunately, but even if there were housing there, it would be intervening structures that would also prevent a barrier between from Ramsgate Road to the relying units that are there. So I don't think there would be an adverse impact from those units if development were to take place. And again, given their low-lying nature, it is, I think, still going to be very limited views that you would get along Ramsgate Road, even if that development wasn't to go ahead.
Thank you, Annabelle. Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. It seems that these two low-lying, good forms of accommodation have sat there quite happily for 3 years. They're hardly visible from the road. There is to be a SAMS contribution, so I really can't see why they shouldn't be retained permanently, and I will support the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a few concerns about this one. I asked we should discuss it. I understand, and I was listening to what Ian was saying, and I understand his point of view. However, these were only given 3 years to remain in situ, and that has been past or just about to achieve that. So therefore, they were only designed to be there for 3 years as non-permanent residential fittings. It's in the curtilage or listed windmill. Also, that it was shown very nicely by Annabelle that it's hidden from the road. It's only hidden from the road because there's a huge amount of ivy on the tree, and that tree may actually fall down at some stage or be cut down. There's nothing saying that's always going to be there. So you will then see two quite ugly mobile homes from the main Canterbury to Birchington or Thanet Road, Thanet to Canterbury Road. And also, you know, it is a listed area around there, and they're not really in keeping. And also, the local parish council aren't happy either. So I think all these things should be taken into consideration. These are not designed to be permanent homes. And when the appeal went in, it was only for 3 years, and that is about to expire or has expired. So they really do need to go and the land put back to what it was. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. I think, if I may, I think we can't prejudge if hedges or whatever are going to be pulled down. They're there at the moment, and that's what we are looking at the moment. But I do understand your point. Councillor Orban.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's quite an interesting site, and those initially there was one caravan put on that site for the owner of the site to develop another part of the site. The owner subsequently contracted cancer, and he had his family come down to look after him, and that is why another caravan was put there. And subsequently, the owner of the site died, and my understanding is that the families still remain there, and they have done for the past 3 years or so. I don't have any specific issue with these caravans here, and because they are low, they're not obtrusive on the street scene at all. And just to help Councillor Hart, I hope, is that you may have noticed in the photographs that at the other side of the windmill there are a load of caravans and camper vans, which have been there for donkey's years and are parked there every year. So obviously the parish council haven't got a concern about that, so I can't see why they would have a concern about these. So as far as I'm concerned, Chair, I support this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. Councillor Paul Moore, you wish to come back?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can you confirm that should this be given approval, that at some stage they may put retrospective planning in for a permanent dwelling on those two sites, or would there be a condition B that they are only to be low-level static homes?
Annabelle, can you?
Yes, sorry, Chair. There is no, we are approving mobile homes for permanent retention. So they are specifically seeking consent for those structures and being mobile homes. So if they were wanting to put another type of structure on the site, that would indeed require planning consent. And we have also put the condition on about structures being single story on the site, but we would need to assess if an application came in, or that application on its own basis.
Thank you, Annabelle. Councillor Hart, you wish to come back?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. With regards to Councillor Orban's comments, I understand what he's saying, and I do agree that the land used for the mobile homes that are parked, or caravans if you prefer, parked there, obviously cannot be stopped because the law, I think, allows you to keep so many of your own and or rent some out for a certain number, and I don't believe they exceed that number. The issue that I have is, yes, I agree with you, they're an ugly sight as you leave Birchington, and they should be hidden and they should be shielded and it shouldn't be allowed. I totally agree with you. And I think the problem is that this whole system is getting more and more lax in what we do. And I think we have to be a strong council and say they were given 3 years, their 3 years has expired, let's get rid of them and carry on again. And you can't just keep letting the encroachment of, oh, they've been there 3 years, isn't that nice? Let them stay. You can't do that. They were given 3 years, that's the end of it, they move on. If, we have to be a strong council about things like this. Otherwise, in my belief, things will just slip and it'll get worse and worse and worse. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hart. Again, I take your point, but obviously they are doing the right thing at the moment, and that again is what we're considering this evening. So it is a point which we can hopefully look at in the future, but at the moment it is this application. So I'm going to come to yourselves. I beg your pardon, Councillor Wright.
Mr. Chairman, I was in. I kind of, although it's not my ward, it was my ward once before, and this site has always been contentious. It's always been only one piece, and bit by bit, it's gradually grown. And my fear is that at some stage that site is going to end up having some sort of major development on it. I think it's just been. I just think that the present people on all of that site are caretakers for the land till it gets developed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Again, I will say again, we're looking at this application and not the future, as that's not in front of us at the moment. But point taken. Okay, no more speakers. I'm going to put this to you, which is the officer's recommendation is for approval. Members' names out once again. If I can find my right paper. Right. You know how this works, members, now. For, against, or abstain. Councillor Coleman-Cook.
For.
Councillor Orban.
For.
Councillor Bayford.
For.
Councillor Curry.
For.
Councillor Patmore.
For.
Councillor Garner.
For.
Councillor Hart.
Against.
Councillor Keane.
For.
Councillor Paulmore.
For.
Councillor Rozeski.
Abstain.
Councillor Wright.
Against.
I am for it, but again, it looks so that has been carried. Thank you, James. Motion carried. Moving on to item 4C that's been called, which is the Foy House in 2729 High Street, Margate. What I would like to say here, I am aware through conversations and a meeting I attended about the Foy House, and tonight we are discussing what's again in front of you, not what the proposals may be. And I have to stress that it is the replacement of the windows and so forth. That's what we are looking at as members this evening. And I am aware that we have Councillor Whitehead with us as well. So if I could ask to outline this application.
Chair, is it, I think Councillor Whitehead wanted to speak under 20.1.
Yes, okay.
Should we go to Councillor Whitehead first?
Yes,
and then
thank you, Ian. Yes, sorry, Helen. Yes, you wish to speak.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to echo initially what the Chair has just repeated, said previously, and I'm here to speak in favour of this application and the improvements that it stands to bring to the area. As members will already be aware and have just been reminded, change of usage to residential accommodation has already been approved. Today, we are only being asked to decide on fenestration, fascia and door presentation. However, I would like to emphasise, for those who are unaware of the social importance and significance of this development, just how important it is. Foy House has been purchased by TDC for temporary accommodation. Our aim is to provide flexible, secure and well-planned temporary accommodation to reduce stress for our residents and increase our direct provision and ensure that as few individuals and families as possible are placed out of area, which is often a deeply distressing experience for our residents. This is a new and exciting provision for us in terms of being able to directly support families within our area, and we were determined to plan it well, and I believe we have done. As we have not done this before, we have taken advice regarding layout and fittings from professionals and colleagues across Kent who are experts in the provision of temporary accommodation to ensure that we are providing the best arrangement possible in this flagship project. I would like to remind everyone that people come into temporary accommodation for many reasons. Living in temporary accommodation is an experience that requires thought and care from landlords to make stays as positive as possible. Our plans for Foy House are our chance to show what we are capable of as a temporary accommodation provider and a chance to bring yet more of our housing service in-house, reducing costs and increasing our control and management of the service simultaneously. It is becoming ever more obvious to all of us that housing is about more than simply providing accommodation. Houses are not simply buildings, they are homes, and in no area of accommodation is this more important to be aware of than in temporary accommodation. We are here today to decide on what is a clear improvement in appearance, which will be actively involving the community around the building in terms of colour scheme, as part of supporting a vital essential and life-changing service for our residents. This presents a huge step forward for our council, and I hope very much that all members hope for the same for our residents in terms of an in-house temporary accommodation service with an exceptional internal and external finish. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. If I could hand over to the officer who's doing the report. Is that you, Ian?
It is me, yes. I'm afraid it's me now onwards. I'm just going to show you the slides then for this scheme. So the site is outlined in red, which is Foy House. So we're in the Margate conservation area in the High Street. So as already outlined, the application is for external alterations to the building. So the site is here. I'm just going to show you some, just one aerial view just to show you where the building is and the presence in the High Street. Looking at the building itself, again, a number of you familiar with Margate will know this property. It's obviously it's relatively modern by Margate High Street standards, with a mix of materials and also a mix of windows. So you'll see UPVC windows on the ground floor here with aluminium windows above. And just looking down the High Street to the rest of the building and then back up, showing the return elevation on New Street. And then, sorry, that's just another view down New Street. At the moment, there's a doorway at the end there. So the application proposes to alter the facade of the building. If we just look at the High Street elevation. So what's proposed is that all the windows will be changed to be aluminium windows, which will bring some consistency to the fenestration within the conservation area. There is through render installation with render cladding on the full sort of frontage of the building. You still retain the brick appearance on the corner on the right hand side of the image. The plinth is also increasing in terms of its height that's there at the moment, with tiles to basically match the existing as proposed. Proposing to obscure glaze some of the windows along the bottom part of the frontage. And then on the New Street elevation, so there's a movement of one of these windows here, and also an addition of some doorways here behind louvres. So you can see the window in red here, which has dropped down, but again, all the windows are changing, so they are consistent in terms of style and also material. And then at the rear, oh, sorry, this is the north side. So actually it's the side elevation, just to confirm those, the doors and windows there are changing. And then the rear elevation, again, just to confirm the change in those windows with some slight alterations to some windows that are existing higher up. So I've got the ground floor layout just to show you, just really to identify the door openings that are being proposed on the New Street elevation. So New Street is at the bottom here. The High Street is on the left-hand side of the image. So here at the moment, you have the doorways at the moment, and what's being proposed is a new doorway here. But again, that's behind the louvered panels. So as mentioned, the proposal is for the external alterations to the building only. The Conservation Officer view is that this results in an improvement to the appearance of the building, and it certainly preserves the character and appearance of the conservation area, and indeed in some areas it does enhance it. There are no additional changes that are being made that affect the living conditions of any of the neighbouring properties. And overall, in terms of the impact on the conservation area, it is recommended for approval. There is one condition that's been put on which requires submissions of the details of the windows in terms of manufacturer's details, because obviously given the fact that it's one of the major changes to the building that's occurring, just check those specific details of the windows. But other than that condition, the recommendation is for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Could the Vice Chair please second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman-Cook. Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say that I think there's no question about the fact that this is a huge visual improvement to this important high street location. So whatever it's used for, I feel must accept these improvements. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. No, I don't see any other speakers on this. So I'm going to put this to you, members, as usual, if I may, if I can find your names. Again, for, against, or abstain. It is for approval. So Councillor Coleman-Cook.
For.
Councillor Orban.
For.
Councillor Bayford.
For.
Councillor Curry.
For.
Councillor Patmore.
For.
Councillor Mike Garner.
For.
Councillor David Hart. Councillor Hart. Councillor Hart. No. Councillor Keane.
For.
Councillor Paul Moore.
For.
Councillor Rozeski.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
And myself, I'm for as well. That motion has been carried, members. Thank you. Thank you, James. Moving on to item, let me make sure I get it right, 4F, which is St. Peter's Church, Hopeful Avenue, Broadstairs. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
This is me. Let me present my screen to you. And show this one. So this is a tree application. The reason it's reported to Planning Committee is because it's an application made by the council. So the application site is here. So it actually involves the trees along between the church here and the Baptist church here in St. Peter's. So you have the footpath that runs along, that runs to the cemetery at the rear of the site. So these are the lime trees in question. There are 19 of them all the way along. You can see that they are very, very high trees, and concerns have been put forward by I believe one or both of the properties adjacent to this, and the application is then put forward by the council for consideration. There has been amendments to the description of development. Originally, the proposal was to pollard the trees, and that has been adapted and amended to be a reduction of up to 5 meters in height and lateral spread of 2 meters. You may have lost me for a second there. With a comment from the council's biodiversity and horticultural officer on the report. So just to look at these trees again to just show the height of them and how visible they are, because they're clearly very important trees in the area. So the proposal has had some back and forth, and obviously it's involved the council's relevant officer who assesses the works, and it has been considered that the tree works here to drop the height of these trees but keep the shape, but also to obviously preserve these trees going forward, would have an appropriate balance between the health of those trees but also the amenity of the area, and taking into account the concerns about the height from the properties either side. And so the recommendation here is for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Could the Vice Chair please second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. I have a speaker on this, Councillor Garner.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just like to start. I have a question, or just a clarification that I might like to ask, and then come back after getting the answer for that, if you don't mind.
Yes, carry on.
Yeah, so Ian, it's just about what the actual proposal is, because I don't, from my reading of the report, I don't quite understand why the proposal differs from the recommendation of the TDC Arboricultural Officer. Can you just confirm exactly what the proposal is?
Yes. So the report, there is one point about the report that is worth noting, is that obviously what's happened is the arboricultural officer, it's the biodiversity and horticultural officer, has provided the comment with regards to the initial works, which has then resulted in discussion about actually what the amount of reduction should be in terms of a crown reduction, and then the measurements have been provided, and then with that being checked by the biodiversity and horticultural officer, which has then resulted in the description which is put forward about the 5 meters in height, 2 meters lateral spread, because of the height of the trees, obviously very significant. So it would drop the height down of those trees. But obviously when approving crown reduction, the British standard is clear that it should be done in measurement terms rather than in percentages, because obviously percentages are open to interpretation, shall we say. So that's why the measurements have been provided, but the comment from the relevant TDC officer has not been updated in the report. So I apologise about that, but the proposal itself has been agreed by all parties.
Okay, thank you for that. I did have a few things I just wanted to say about this. I mean, as you mentioned, the trees in the churchyard are indeed very old and tall. And I personally think it's a bit of a shame that too many people seem to be afraid of tall trees. Unlike other areas of Kent where tall trees are allowed to grow to maturity, there seems to be an obsession here with cutting trees down to size, which has been witnessed in a number of areas around the district. I'm aware it's very close to where I live as well. I know that a couple of branches have fallen from one or two of the trees into the courtyard of the Baptist church, but they have not been huge branches. They've only been small branches, and they haven't had an impact on anybody. And while there may be a case for some dead wooding in the canopies, I don't personally believe that there is a case for more radical work. And I also just wanted to make a point that it should be noted that trees that have been heavily pollarded further along in the churchyard are not faring very well. And I think this often happens when the work isn't carried out by people qualified to do the work. And I do note your condition number 2, that the works will be carried out by a competent and qualified tree surgeon. And I just want to emphasise that I hope that if there is work done on these trees, that this happens. These are important trees and should be treated with respect. So if this work is approved to be done, I hope that it is done by people who are trained in how to manage veteran trees. And if it needs paying for by TDC to do that, then I hope that TDC will be paying for that work to be done.
Thank you for that, Councillor Garner. Ian, do you wish to come back on that?
I think it's, in terms of the requirement on the condition, that obviously does require, as you point out, Councillor Garner, that it's something that is a requirement of the permission. I think whilst it's very important that members consider this as if this were any other application and not by the council, I think it is important naturally that the council, if we are the ones that would be carrying out the works, obviously we're the applicant. I don't know that we either our own staff or how we would instruct these works particularly. It would be clearly important that that works are done to a high standard because we are the district council, and so I will certainly be imploring the applicant in this instance to ensure that is the case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Moving on to Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, trees are my favourite subject. And I don't often disagree with Councillor Garner. However, in this situation, I partly agree and partly don't. The size of those trees is quite dramatic. And realistically, a reduction of 15 foot isn't going to make a huge amount of difference. So why is that actually being done? If you're going to reduce them, at least reduce them to a sensible height. 15 foot in the whole scheme of those trees is absolutely minuscule. And I think that needs to be addressed, really. I think if you're only going to take 15 foot off the things, then don't even bother. I mean, you've got to take 20, 25 foot off them to make a difference. And I think that the issue you have is that when you do reduce, you get a lot of epicomic growth, and that might then make it even darker or a little bit heavy at the top of the canopy. So I think it needs to be looked at in a slightly more intelligent approach, really. So that's my only comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. I know Mr. Livingston has frozen on my screen. I'm sure he has on. He hasn't moved for about 10 minutes, but I'm still sure he's still there. Thank you for that, Councillor Hart. I'm sure Mr. Livingston will take that on board. Councillor Paul Moore.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, I was partially going to agree with Councillor Garner in that this is my ward, and I particularly like the trees in there. I think it's a good greenswood area. They are lovely trees, and I am concerned about who does the work and that it's done in a professional manner. And I was actually going to ask to review the dimensions of being cut to reduce it so that it's not 15 foot. So I don't agree with Councillor Hart, I'm afraid. I like the trees the way they are. I think anything that's overhanging a boundary wall should be trimmed back so it's not potentially falling. Any dead wood which is identified should be removed, and that should be done on a regular basis to protect the neighbouring properties. And I think these trees should be maintained and kept and looked after. So I'm in agreement with Councillor Garner, and unfortunately at loggerheads with Councillor Hart with that one. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's a good job we're sitting in our own homes tonight. The way debate's going on there, but good debate. Councillor Keane.
Just want to know, how tall are these trees currently? Roughly.
Ian, can you answer that?
I must admit, thank you, Chair. I must admit I might have to defer to the ward councillors on this one with regards to the total height.
Ward councillors, I will come to you. A difficult one.
I couldn't tell you exactly how tall they are. I mean, I think if someone asked me how tall, I would say very. I do.
Okay, that's an easy way out, Councillor Garner.
Coming back to what Councillor Hart said, taking 15 foot off is actually quite a significant amount, especially when you look at the tree. That there's quite a long there's quite a long trunk before any branches are actually formed. So I agree with Councillor Paul Moore, and I totally disagree with Councillor Hart. These trees have been they're magnificent tall trees which are grown as they should be growing, and I believe they should be left well alone. I'm in agreement with put apart from the dead wood in to make them safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. I see that you came up to speak again, but I take it you don't want to now.
I was going to say I am quite concerned that the condition 2 is actually adhered to. If this were to be agreed, these are old veteran trees and they need to be looked after. And the work needs to be done by, as it says, a competent tree surgeon. So it needs to be done by specialists. And it would be, if it has to be done, it would be a good investment on TDC's part to pay for people who are qualified to work on these trees to do it, rather than we end up with trees like there are further up in the churchyard that were quite heavily pollarded and are now struggling.
Thank you for that, Councillor Garner. I'm sure Mr. Livingston, as I mentioned just now, will take that on board. Councillor Orban.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to come back on that point, it says it in the condition, that we will use a specialist. We will take the best. The council is not I certainly would not have some fly-by-night company coming in and wanted to hatchet these trees down. We will use a specialist company to carry out this work. I mean, simple as that. It says it in the condition. I'm no expert of trees whatsoever. I like them, like most of us do, and I take the points from Councillor Garner. They are magnificent trees. However, we do have a fully qualified biodiversity, whatever the job title is, and I'm quite happy to go along with their comments and the issues that have been brought forward to this. So I'm on balance, I'm happy to support it, and I'm hopefully that the trees stay fully balanced too.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Alban. Councillor Moore, you wish to come back?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We are very fortunate in Broadstairs that we have our own tree warden who does a fantastic job and is so conscientious that she would probably know the exact measurements of those trees off the top of her head. And I think it would be just as easy if someone wants to know those, we could actually ask her to look at that and give us the information. I agree with Councillor Garner. We need to make sure that the trees are done properly. And I also agree with Councillor Alban that I don't doubt that we have professional people being employed to do the work. But I just referred to what Councillor Garner said about the other trees that were recently done, and they are now struggling. So we need to make sure that we do it in a conscientious and safe manner with the trees' best interests at heart. Because once they're gone, they're gone. And it's our heritage to keep those trees there. And that's quite important. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. I totally agree with you there. Right, Councillor Alban. Yes, I did note that, Councillor Alban. We're meant to keep this serious, but it wouldn't look very good for the tree officer with a tree growing out of her head, would it? And I know we're live, so I move on quickly to put this to yourselves to the vote. You know how this works. I always say this, but I have to do this. In favour, for, against, or abstention. So go through your names again, please, which is Councillor Coleman Cook. For. Councillor Alban.
For.
Councillor Bayford.
For.
Councillor Curry.
For.
Councillor Patmore.
For.
Councillor Garner.
Against.
Councillor Hart.
For, Chair.
Councillor Keane.
Against.
Councillor Paulmore.
Against.
Councillor Rozeski.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
And I'm for it as well. And quick adding up, I think that motion has been carried. Thank you very much, James. Unless I've missed when we called out names to call in an application, please correct me if I'm wrong. That concludes our meeting tonight. I know it's been quite a long meeting, members. Thank you very much for your time, as always.